A warm welcome to all from Dr. Vasavi Acharya to the third day of ECDF Worldwide Digital 2020. Today we have two speakers lined up, and first we have Simran Ballani, who will be speaking on the topic enriching social quotient in the next gen capital. Simran is an educationist, strategist, and change maker with 22 years of experience in US and India. She is also the zonal head ECDF Bengaluru, and she is a gold medalist in early childhood education, currently pursuing PG diploma in education leadership. I welcome Simran and I hand over to her to start the session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vasavi. And I'm happy to be here yet again on day 3 of ECDF Worldwide Digital. And I welcome all the audience, whoever are joining us from whatever part of the globe, a very, very warm welcome to each one of you. What I'm going to talk about today is a topic which has been very close to my heart. And I have been working very closely on this particular topic and doing my research in this for last 3 years. So let's look at what I'm going to present today. Is the screen visible all right?
Absolutely, Simran.
Thank you. So do you ever look at the children you work with and you wonder, what does the future hold for them? Do you think that will they have a good life? Will this be having a good life? Will that encounter any problems? Do you wonder if you're making a difference in their lives? Whether you're an educator, whether you're a parent, whether you're a policymaker. What do you wonder? What do you look at? What do you see? Do you wonder if they would be a loving and caring human being? Yes, we are all very focused today in education, academics, sports, but are we also nurturing them to become a socially responsible citizen? Because when we are done with them, the society has to live with them. Vice versa, this particular child who we are wondering so much about is going to be with the society. They are going to graduate, go out there. So these are the questions which came to me 3 years back. And I was wondering, what are we doing for these small children to become socially responsible? Here is my vision statement that I bring to this digital conference today. Enriching social intelligence in human capital, the next generation human capital. I call them as capital, but they are, right? They are our human capitals. And that's why we have so much of studies going in the early childhood segments, right? Now let's talk about social intelligence. All right. What is social intelligence? What is social? We have been hearing a lot about emotional intelligence. What is social intelligence? Social intelligence refers to the process by which a child learns to interact with others around them. Social development most often refers to how a child develops friendship, relationships, and how child handles conflicts. I will draw your attention here for a moment because we are going to connect this handling conflict, being with people, being with their friends, to how they go out, be graduates, and they go out and connect with the society as a whole. Gardner's ideas have been picked up and explored by others, including Daniel Coleman, whose 1995 book popularized the term emotional intelligence and led schools to offer programs in social and emotional learning. But what we are going to focus, ladies and gentlemen, this evening is social quotient. So what do we want? I mean, we have a lot of expectations from children. Do we want them to be a responsible citizen? Yes, we want them to be environmental friendly. We want them to be more responsible. We want them to be ahead in academics. We want a lot of things from them. I like this quote when I was researching more on social quotient. If you have children, remember this. When you finish with them, the rest of the world has to live with them. So please teach them respect. Yes, We are teaching them a lot of things, and yes, at home, whatever parents can do, they are doing their best in teaching them respect. But as schools, as kindergartens, as preschool authorities, as educationists, our responsibility lies to teach them respect, just not academics. All right. Helping children improve their self-awareness and confidence, manage their disturbing emotions and impulses, increases their empathy, pays off not just in improved behavior, but in measurable academic achievements. So when we are trying to enrich the social quotient, underlying, we are also trying to enrich their academics. We will come to that connection. If you bump into someone, you usually say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry." When someone is speaking, you don't cut them off to say something. More than likely, you have learned these unwritten social rules when you were very young and quickly understood how to follow them. But some people you will see have picked up very well. They know these mannerisms, they are very good at that. I'm talking about people and not talking about children. I will come back to talking about the early years. While at a lot of times we've encountered where people have not been very kind, there was not much empathy shown, there were not much manners shown. Why? Because it is very difficult to change a habit of an adult. So this is where we start, and we start at the root level. All right, so let's see what comprises of we. We looked at the slide. What do we want, right, from a child? Let's look, what does we comprise of? We comprises of a lot of things: parent, corporate, education, society. That's my daughter there, Sarah. What are the expectations of each segment? Let's look at that. Parents, society, corporate, education institutes have their expectations, yes. Social norms, yes, we definitely want the child to know these unwritten rules. But how? How are we going to achieve that? I want you to concentrate on this statement. Having a high IQ is an advantage, but having an EQ can make all the difference to studies and future career. I just love this statement. Yes, IQ is very, very important, but EQ will take us there where IQ cannot. EQ and IQ are difference between being able to function well and being able to function well enough to succeed. Positive social development is important for many reasons. Not only is child ability to interact with others is critical, but also it also improves their language skills, self-esteem, and their ability to resolve conflict. All right, so let's look at what are the parents' expectations. So studies have shown that when parents spend this interactive time with their children, all right, and they give them, of course, a very enriching expectations and experiences. Now, there was a very nice study which was published in Child Development, concluded that children with highly involved parents not only had enhanced social functioning, but also fewer behavior problems. Now, this is when parents are spending time with children, this is what happens. But overall, whether they are spending X amount of time, not spending, what are the general expectations of parents? Child's intellectual and emotional growth, of course, developing positive esteem. Yes, child should have positive esteem, confidence, learn to work and play with others. These points are when I have spoken to parents. These pictures that you see are real parents where I had done the case study in my own school. Respect the elders in family, demonstrate respectful and responsible behaviors, and of course, they want proof of learning. So these are parents' expectations from a child. Let's look at society's expectations. Of course, the slide says it all: ethics, morals, values, equality, responsible, taking care of the environment, etiquettes. So social rules refers to expectations, responsibilities, and behaviors we adopt in certain situations. The ideas for expected or normal behavior are reinforced both by the individual and by the society. Social expectations is an internalized social norm for individuals and organizations. Thus, for a society as a whole, about what people should do, it operates on two different levels. All right. So one is, of course, when the person is indoor, is behaving in certain ways. Once when the person is outdoors with people in a normal general environment, take it as a mall, take it as a shopping area. How are we supposed to behave? There are unsaid rules. All right. This is the expectation what society has, maybe not from the child, maybe the child tantrums here or there would be not, but as in citizen, the society expects these things. Let's look at the another one, educationist expectations. Now this is a very interesting thing which I encountered. I was in this conference with BITS Pilani, which is a very premier institute in India, and I was presenting a paper on the same lines, impact of early learning on working professionals. And I spoke to all these elite members there who are doctorates in their fields, and I asked them, what are your expectations of your students? And a very senior professor told me that, I really wish my students knew how to knock on my door before coming to my cabin. Yes, that's true. All right, this is a first hand encounter, or rather call it as an interview. All right, and she says that between these lectures that I give, I hardly get these 5 or 10 or 15 minutes to be there in my office, get ready for the next lecture. Sometimes I want to just sip water and sip tea. I don't get that chance. Sometimes I have seen children passing, let's say students, let me just not refer to students passing the corridors and not even bothering to say a good morning and a hello. Isn't that what good manners are all about? She said, can you do this kind of a program for my students? And that was my cue. So I told her, well, I work with small children and I just came to present my case here. Well, she says, I wish you could do this kind of a session for our students also. So most students are not exposed or trained in business protocols or etiquettes. There is a lot of focus on academics, you all will agree. Furthermore, manners are, but yet while we are not doing that, manners are identified as job selection attribute and considered important skill to have when campus recruitments are happening, and we will see some very good study on that. And what are corporate expectations? Because we are at the end of the day going to work somewhere. Either it would be an office environment, either the child will go on to become an entrepreneur, run a restaurant, lead some kind of a business program. They are going to interact with people. They are going to interact at professional level. So what are the corporate expectations? Of course, there is to be accountability, multitasking, etiquette, leadership, positive attitude. There is, of course, when I looked at the comparison between what was the education sector's requirement versus the corporate requirement, there is a requirement of, there is dedication, perseverance, respectful behavior, again a common factor, true enthusiasm, special talents, unique skills, yes, we all need that, and intellectual curiosity, but the respectful behavior remains at the core center. Now, this is a very interesting study, and if you are enthusiastic like me in this field, do read this up, how manners can build up profits, how rudeness has been secretly losing businesses approximately $14,000 per employee. Now, did you know that a moment of rudeness has been reported to decrease a doctor's performance by more than 50% in an exercise involving hypothetical life and death situations? This is what our language, the way we behave, the way we talk can do to us. 7 out of 10 employees reported rudeness in the workplace as number one reason for their unhappiness and resignations. How many times have we heard people don't leave companies, they leave their managers, right? However, majority of people do not give the idea of manners, etiquettes, training, anything that is branded as soft skill to contribute to profit and image. If you go deeper into this, you will see there is a lot of contribution. Now, this is a very nice study done by IOSR, Journal of Business and Management. And these are the skills required when they did this survey. This is the skills that are required. So decision making is coming up to 11%, communication skills, leadership, teamwork, positive attitude. So under one of the questionnaires, this graduates also suggested that institutions should take extra training on following to make them more equipped for corporate world. And this is a study. This is a study being done by IOSR, Journal of Business, with the engineering students which are about to graduate. So there is a need of inculcating this social quotient, yeah, in students much earlier than when we are giving them the soft skills training. Okay, let's look at the gap analysis from campus to corporate, right? These are the problems which are faced by fresh graduates in an environment, in a corporate. Lack of guidance. This is when they have gone to the corporates. Lack of guidance, accepting the workplace culture, they didn't know about this. Lack of interpersonal skills, lack of real world experience, and competition, of course. All right, it can also be this is, of course, there is a lot of rapid growth of technology, and children are all in their world, but we as educators, it is up to us, how do we break this monotony and make sure there is a lot of room for social interaction, there is a lot of real world experience, there is a way to manage conflicts. From this research, it is also evident that despite there being thousands of engineers which are being released, all right, by the market, the corporate industry experts strongly feel that only 25% of them are employable, even though they have all the technical skills. Using the results from the survey, the following conclusion had been drawn. Any child can be taught to be beautifully behaved with no effort greater than quiet patience and perseverance, whereas to break bad habits once they are acquired is a Herculean task. All right, let's look at the next step. All right, so let's talk about what are the qualities that are standing out when you're talking about this various V segment: corporates, education, parents, right? What is it? We need self-awareness, we need self-management, we need relationship management, and we need social awareness. All right, and a lot of self-awareness is to be developed in the child. Empathy, positive outlook, achievement, organizational awareness, not at our kindergarten level, but yes, at the middle school and the higher school level, and coach and mentorship, teamwork. Here's where our projects come in. So when you're doing projects at kindergarten, they are just not projects, you're also teaching them teamwork. When you're giving them some kind of a challenges to do things right, and you're going to reward them, you're creating leaders, right? So as we said, these are our common expectations: respectful behavior, attitude. We need positive attitude. We need to inculcate positive attitude. Leadership skills, a lot of confidence, attitude, of course, and etiquettes. So what are we doing, and why is the urgency to inculcate social quotient? Social media is taking our young adults far away from reality. Let's accept that. All right. And a social quotient curriculum can ensure equal opportunity to all children. This is a very important segment, and I want all the educationists, all the teachers to remember this. When the children are coming to us, they're coming from different families, a different background, all right? And though they might be at a very good level financially, but you don't know what kind of time is being spent with them at home. Our school, our kindergartens can give them that equal opportunity to learn mannerisms, to learn public speaking. Yes, etiquette learning and public speaking, these are the two areas that I have been focusing about in last 3 years. Why public speaking? Because it develops their vocabulary. It can also detect speech delays. It also goes a long way to in developing their, what do I say? It develops this self-confidence. They have this such nice feeling that they can talk in front of their friends. All right. Now this is what we can do as educators. And take a moment, please make notes of these slides. So this is what we have done at ground level. We have introduced these curriculums, etiquette learning, public speaking, and leadership skills. At the same time, it's very important you balance this with teacher enhancement programs. So, of course, teacher training in all of this syllabus that you're introducing in social quotient, teacher training is first foremost important. There has to be a lot of cross learning sessions, internal development sessions, and motivation. And how do you get the teachers to be motivated? When you get feedback from parents of how they are liking your etiquette learning or social quotient curriculum, right? As I said, Parent Connect. So take feedback from parents, parents' involvements, and parent engagement programs. So these are some of my favorites parents' testimony. This is in the second year when our curriculum was already there. And this little child holding the mic, I have seen his journey since he was just 2 years in our playgroup. And with the help of this curriculum of etiquette learning and public speaking, he was so confident to speak at an event that he actually snatched the mic and he went around to speak and sing. Down below, this girl who was coming out of K2 that we call, and we do monthly assemblies, and this is where we are basically giving them the platform to come and present what they have learned during the month. And they have done such a phenomenal job over the academic year. Here are more. And this is another good success story of 4 years journey of the child with us. Both of these parents have shared. We have received such positive testimonials. But this was, of course, what we did is we tracked the progress of the child. We made sure that we were not breaking this chain. So if there were monthly assemblies, there were monthly assemblies where all the children were presenting their topic. They were doing role plays of etiquette learning. Let me take you back to the slide. So here is where, if you see these pictures, the child on the left is showing you how he or she is supposed to keep the table mat, keep the lunch box, snack box, and the water bottle, wear an apron. There is a role play happening of a restaurant, how they're going to be in a restaurant. And then on the last picture, you see a child this child is giving a talk about how to conserve environment, and he's just 5.5 years old. All right, good manners will open the doors that best education cannot. Absorb this. So this is something that we as educators have the power to inculcate these social quotient curriculum at any given point in time, no matter what. Even if you have a set curriculum running, which we also do, this is just an addition of what we can do. You can always add it in between. Many of you will wonder what to do in online scenario. I will show it to you. This is a paper that I had presented in BITS Ballani, again, etiquette learning and public speaking, early etiquette learning and its impact on higher education and working professionals. You can also find a link of research paper. It is on scholarly.com. And if you just type etiquette learning and public speaking, you can read my entire research paper. And our journey continues online as well. So yes, all of us thought, let's not stop our etiquette learning and public speaking just because the mode suddenly has turned online. And we have started this weekly, twice a week, we do these classes for about 30 minutes. And this is the class which is happening, and we just wanted to show you the picture. And this is what we are covering. And these children that you see are all between the age group of 3 and 6. And this is what we are giving them, the worksheets. So they fill this up and they send it back to us. So this is kind of keeping them engaged even when we are not working with them on everyday, day-to-day basis. Yeah, I hope you can see this video. Is it visible?
Yes, please take it. You're welcome.
So here is the child saying, please.
Sorry, mommy, I don't speak again.
So as a weekly project, we ask parents to send us the videos of children, how they have been practicing good manners at home. And these are the videos just sent last week. And I leave you with this thought. This is my favorite thought. Any child can be taught to be beautifully behaved when they are little. But breaking the same habits when they become older is a herculean task. So we have the power to start at an early age. So let's start doing that. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, whether you're a policy maker, you have the power to do it. So I am open for questions. I think we still have about 5 minutes.
Yes. So the attendees can, they can type their questions in the chat box, also put their mic on and ask if there's any question.
I would be more than
This
happy to interact on one-on-one basis.
this is such a pertinent topic that Simran has talked about. And I think it's really, really important because when we look at basically, the development of the IQ and EQ also, and this also is a part of EQ, the etiquettes, public speaking, the way the child behaves is one part. Sometimes, the educators kind of, or even the parents, they kind of just put it off, thinking that education is going to add that to it. But
Absolutely.
that's
You know,
completely a different forte. That's a different area of
I-
work, and we need to work on that.
I'm yet to hear parents when they say that, oh, I'm so happy my child is expressing himself or herself. They are, welcoming adults when they are coming home, or, they're offering them a glass of water, or even understanding the thoughts and the feelings of another human being, not necessarily a friend, goes a long way in developing them as a responsible social citizen.
Absolutely. And now with the term of social distancing, when
Yes.
actually, it's physical distancing and we are kind of,
Sure.
socially distancing each other and just getting inside our gadgets,
Yes.
and we often see, young children not interacting with the elders like we used to do when we used to see our aunts around and all, they're just kind of aloof. So we need to inculcate these now. Yep.
Yes, excellent point, Dr. Vasavi. So we have tried to do these role plays where we have told children to like open a door and welcome a guest where the other child is coming, to tell them how to behave socially. So those times are like off gadget times where they're actually going to interact with each other. All right, so I see some comments. Yes, somebody is asking for the presentation. Yes, I would be so much happier to share that with you. Probably strengthening parent partnerships even before putting the responsibility on the child will help the child. Yes, so that's why when we are developing such kind of a curriculum, it's very important that you do parent engagement programs. Yes, thank you so much. And I see a lot of comments. Thank you so much. It is very, very encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you, Simran, for this wonderful session.
Thank you so much.
And we move on to our next session. We already have Dr. Tyrone Jones II who's joined us. And today he's going to talk about leaders in early childhood education, the journey. Mr. Tyrone has joined us all the way from San Francisco. It must be really, really early in the morning. Yes, Mr. Jones. Yeah. And I really thank him, for this timing because we are all over the globe and it's sometimes difficult to get a timing that's agreeable to all. Well, Mr. Tyrone he's a child development specialist and a center director and has led teams of early childhood educators delivering high quality educational experiences for young children. And most recently, he directed the Children Development Center at Electronic Arts, a global leader in the tech gaming space. So I welcome Tyrone Jones to the ECDF platform, and it's over to you, Mr. Tyrone.
Thank you so much for allowing me to join you. I'm excited to be with you today. Want to make sure that you can hear me okay.
Yes, you're audible.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's make sure we are good to go. Okay. So first, as you mentioned, thank you for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening I know that we're all in different parts of the world, and so I appreciate people taking the time to engage in the topic of leadership in early childhood education and the journey that we go on. It's exciting, exciting topic to dive into, one that I'm very passionate about, and I look forward to spending time with you today. As mentioned, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge Dr. Acharya and the other presenters. It's been incredible to listen to the topics that have been discussed already. And I know that a lot of work has gone into planning this event. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge and appreciate you for your work.
Thank you so much.
So I have a few goals for us in our time together. The first goal I have is for us to really figure out, why is it important? Why is leadership so important in ECE? And how does it differ from leadership in other industries? We are unique in early childhood. We're special, and leadership is very different. And so we want to tackle that. Second goal is why do we need to be proactive about our leadership and be very intentional in our efforts? We want to discuss that. And then the last thing that we want to cover, and we'll cover this primarily, are the 4 phases of leadership that we go on our journey as we develop through our career. And so I look forward to sharing my journey with you. It'll be interwoven, how my career has come to be in our discussion. So I'm gonna advance to the next slide and dive in. The first thing that we want to do before we really even get in is we want to define leadership. I would love for us to all be on the same page about what leadership is. And so starting out, we have a quote from Susan Ward, and she says, "Leadership is the art of motivating a group of people to act toward achieving a common goal." And in early childhood, what we're doing and how our leadership is defined is we're taking a group of educators, we're identifying a goal in helping children to thrive and to master developmental milestones. And we're moving a team of educators towards the goal of helping children have rich educational experiences. And so that is what leadership looks like at a very basic level in early childhood. I think we also want to figure out, why is leadership in early childhood worthy of discussion? In my career, I've seen conference after conference, there are certain topics that continue to come up, and all for a good reason. They're all very important, all needing to be addressed. I think about topics like classroom management. How well do we support children and manage their behavior in the classroom, or engage them? How good are we as educators at curriculum development? Some of the questions, some of the topics that we address are supporting children who are exhibiting challenging behaviors, or how do we work with children with special needs and make sure their needs are met? I think about ones like early literacy and pre-math and portfolios, tracking children's development, identifying milestones, social emotional learning and developmentally appropriate practices. There are a number of different workshops that we experience, but I find that we seldom take a moment to really wrap our arms around, what does leadership look like in ECE? And so I have a couple of questions I'd like us to consider. How is leadership in ECE different than other industries? I want to paint a quick example for us that I think will resonate with all of us. And the first one is this. If I worked in finance and my CPA doesn't show up, my CPA may be able to do remote learning. May be able to work remotely. They may have the ability to work from home, not feeling well. They can crunch some numbers on a spreadsheet and the work will still get done. With us, if a teacher is unable to come in and work for the day, we've got to figure out, how are we going to make sure that the children are cared for? How do we meet the legal required ratio of staff to child? And so we can't do a distance or remote work for what we do as educators. I don't think that Zoom works very well for supervising infants or preschoolers or toddlers. And so our leadership looks a little different. I think about another question we want to ask ourselves: why is it important for us to be proactive about developing leaders in ECE? We find ourselves, this is a real life scenario. We find ourselves in a situation where people are being hired or promoted into roles of leadership prior to receiving adequate training. That's something that things are moving, they're dynamic. The center is hustling and bustling, and we often need to promote somebody, and unfortunately, sometimes they've not received the training that they need. And so we've got to make decisions about how we can be proactive. What measures can we take to ensure that our teachers, our educators are ready for their next opportunities? What I'd like to do is, in the chat, if you could pop in what you believe is the average rate of turnover in early childhood education across the industry, regardless of where you're at in the world. What do you believe is the average rate of turnover for early childhood education? Go ahead and pop it in the chat. We want to see what people say. In doing some homework across the board, and this is inclusive of directors, the average rate is 30%. To put that number in perspective, what does that look like? If we have a small staff of 10 teachers and we lose 3 of them, we're going to be in a tough spot. If we have a staff of 20 and we lose 6, if we have a staff of 100, we lose 30 people in a year. That is exactly what's taking place all over the world. And as has already been mentioned, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Things are, we're having to learn and navigate how to deal with different challenges here while we're in the pandemic. We're finding that teachers are not returning. There's fear around hopping back into the centers, and how are we going to prevent ourselves from, what measures can we take to make sure that we're not getting ill, that the coronavirus is not spreading? We don't want to be contributors, and we have teachers who have done great job, but maybe they're considered high risk and don't want to return. And so turnover is looking different. That 30% might now be 35 and 40. So this is it's an issue that we have to tackle. What we want to look at is a couple of things. Another consideration is certainly the lack of compensation plays a role in director turnover. But I believe the single greatest issue that impacts director turnover is the lack of successful preparation or leadership development. Let's look at what happens. On this slide here, we have 3 different segments, 3 different areas where impact is had. We see negative impact on the absence of leadership, or when a director is not in place. And the first area, and I've made sure that the font was biggest in the section where it says teachers, bigger than when it says children, bigger than when it says parents on your right, because the biggest impact that we see on the absence of leadership and the immediate influence is on teachers. What happens to teachers? Teachers feel insecure. What's going to happen? I was supposed to advance my role. I was supposed to grow within my career. The director said that I was going to move into a new role and be able to support the center in a different capacity. And so now the director's gone, and the question becomes, what happens to my future? Or even thinking about us on a personal level, we have children, and our teachers are working schedules, and they need to get off by a certain time to be able to meet the needs of their family. Well, if they don't know if they're going to be able to continue with that schedule, it breeds insecurity, uncertainty, lack of communication, less support. These are all issues that teachers deal with. And this is a very sequential model that we see in terms of impact. And so when we look at the next one, we look at children. And you might say, how are children impacted? Well, certainly behaviors can change. Separation anxiety. We see children progress through a certain milestone. Maybe they've recently been acclimated to the center, and they've gotten over the separation anxiety. Mom and dad are leaving, and now instead of clinging on to mom and dad, they're saying, bye mom, bye dad, they're ready to go. And then we see a change in leadership in the center. We might see a change in teachers. And now the child has regressed in terms of their ability to manage separation anxiety or stranger anxiety. I think about the last one, and it's parents. And certainly we see teachers impacted, we see children impacted. And then you know what? Children are coming home and parents are experiencing their child in a different place. Their social emotional development is not as strong as it was. They're starting to see the regression, and then there's dissatisfaction on the part of a parent. They're not happy with the quality of care they're receiving. The lack of communication because directors not able to send communication about the center and what's happening, or about their child. Or we see teacher turnover. And when a parent doesn't know who's caring for their child, dissatisfaction certainly is sure to follow. So what I'd like to do is begin the conversation now about the 4 phases of leadership and the journey that we go on. So this is beginning with my journey as a young child. This is my father and myself as a little guy. And I will tell you that as professionals, we all arrive in early childhood education from different places for different reasons. Some of us, it's a second profession. Maybe we began in engineering and we said to ourselves, we're excited about engineering, and then we get into it and it's not quite what we hoped it would be. And so we've always loved children, and maybe said, now it's time for me to explore my passion and my heart for children. Others of us, we see it as a stepping stone on the way to primary education or secondary education. And so we've arrived in early childhood education as a stepping stone onto something else. Some of us, it's, where we have children and all of a sudden there are certain challenges that we're experiencing as a parent, and we need we need solutions to how we're going to support our children. And as we begin to study and find solutions, we find ourselves interested in how children actually develop and learn and grow. And so we find ourselves in ECE, and for others of it's a part-time job. Even though we all arrive in different ways, we're here. And so we want to figure out, how do we go from here? Quote right here from Frederick Douglass, it says, "It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." And I'll tell you that my journey for myself in ECE, it began in there's 2 particular things that I want to share with you with regard to how I began. Number one is it was an innate love for children. I can tell you that as young, when I was 5 years old, we might be in the grocery store with mom and dad, and they might be pushing the cart down the way. I'm trailing behind, and I'm looking at another child who's in a cart who's younger than me, and I'm seeing them smile. And I want to enjoy their smile. I want to make them laugh. I'm seeing their, how they glow, and I'm fascinated with children. There was something that was, I hadn't done any studying necessarily. It was just an innate love for children. But I will tell you that the second thing that drove me to want to work with children and set me on my journey was a childhood filled with memories, some good, some bad. The good memories were certainly ones that I wanted to replicate for other children so they could experience what I experienced. And for others, there were challenges that I experienced in my childhood that I said I never want other children to have to experience. So how can I have an impact on children and change the trajectory of their life so that things are different for them? And so those are the 2 things that began my journey, the 2 ways in which my journey began, and which brings us to the first phase of leadership, which is learn. For all of us, leadership begins with phase 1, which is we learn. When we think about early childhood education, we learn a variety of things. This is where the most of our acquisition, we do our work to acquire most of our initial information as leaders. We start learning about the philosophies of education, the different pedagogies within early childhood. Do we want to adopt a play-based philosophy? which are, developmentally appropriate practices where children are having fun and they're in a print-rich environment, they're exploring their world, and we're encouraging play. Or are we subscribing to a Reggio philosophy, or Waldorf, or Montessori, or high scope? All of these are different philosophies, and that's a part of phase one, which is we learn. Maybe for us, as we enter the field, we're trying to learn what age group we love. What are we most passionate about? Do we love infants? Do we love feeding them bottles or tracking their sleep patterns? Do we love playing with toddlers and seeing them use language for the first time? Maybe it's seeing them walk, take their first steps. In phase one of leadership, it's where we spend most of our time learning. There's so much to be grasped. As I continued from my childhood on in through high school and into college, which is where I think the next segment of our We Learn process or phase is where we begin to study. We unravel the different parts of development, the developmental domains, and how children progress. I spent my time getting my degree in child development, and I just became increasingly more fascinated. I started to see how there were children's learning styles were different, and I noticed that some of my learning styles matched some of the learning styles of children. I learned about myself and I learned about children, and so it fueled the flame for me in working with children. I took on my first role out of college as a teacher in a twos classroom. And sometimes people would ask me, well, what do you teach 2-year-olds? And of course, I'm thinking to myself, wow, there's so much to learn. They get a chance to identify color recognition. They're learning they're learning introduction to their alphabets and pre-math concepts. But I started working in twos. And so that was, again, where my learning began. And so phase two, we transitioned from we learn to phase two, which is master. We master. As leaders, we go from learning our information to how do we master what we've learned? There are 4 components to mastery that we want to look at. And before we go into that, we'll start with the first one, which is execution. So we've learned this information in phase one. And if we take, let's say lesson planning, for example, we're someone who loves to lesson plan. We love to develop curriculum. We love the implementation of curriculum. The first component of mastery is execution. I now need to go out and execute my lesson plan. I'm going to make sure that I deliver it as best as I can. Well, what happens after execution? Let's take a look at that. It's evaluation. The second component of mastery within leadership is evaluation. Some of that is self-evaluation. And another part of it is we have others evaluate ourselves. Maybe it's a peer evaluation, a supervisory evaluation. And after we've evaluated ourselves, what do we do then? The next phase, the next component after evaluation is modification. So we're taking a look at that lesson plan. We've been willing to take a reflective look at ourselves, an honest and humble perspective on how we did executing our lesson plan. We evaluated. Somebody evaluated us and they've provided feedback, and now we need to modify. So we make adjustments, adaptations, we make corrections. And after we modify, the last component is repetition. How do we reach a point of mastery where it's doing it over and over and over again? And we see ourselves reach higher levels of competence at whatever our respective area is. For those that love parent engagement, we need more and more reps at engaging parents to develop mastery in that area. We need more and more repetitions at working on environments if that's what we love to do. And that's what we want to master, or circle time, which was my personal favorite. I love reading stories, and after story, I dive into the middle of the circle and everybody would jump on my back. It was my special way of having our circle time. Here's a quote from Malcolm Gladwell, and it says, "It's an extraordinarily consistent answer in an incredible number of fields." That means it's consistent across the board. You need to have practiced to have apprenticed for 10,000 hours before you become good. Now, of course, if we take the look at our average circle time shouldn't be more than 15 minutes. Now, we're not doing 40,000 circle times before we become good. I think that's a bit excessive, but the point remains true, which is we need to do it over and over and over again if we're going to develop mastery in what we're doing. And so after mastery, so we've learned, we've mastered, and so what's next? We lead. And so leading comes about in a few different ways. It's interesting how it presents itself. Let's take a look. The first thing that may happen or may occur is intrinsic motivation. You identify that you've mastered a specific area of your performance. Maybe it is indoor environments in the classroom. You have your parent boards. They look amazing. They're sharing with parents what the children in the classroom are learning, how the art, sometimes art sent home and a parent looks at the art and goes, great, my child did another fun art project, but they don't know the learning that occurred, the sensory experiences that were taking place. And so maybe environments is what you've mastered, but you mastered it, your confidence has grown, and you genuinely desire to help others achieve the same level of mastery. And so you begin to reach out and lead. You know, my influence. Your peers have taken note of your strengths, and now you're reaching out. They're reaching out to you with requests to be influenced by you. It certainly happens amongst your peers. They start to look at what you're doing. They notice your work and they say, hey, can you help me reach the same level of mastery that you've reached in this area? And you think about the other part of leadership, and some of it is promotion. You know, I think about promotion. Supervisors, administrators, and those in positions of influence provide you with a growth opportunity because your skill sets fill a performance gap that they've identified on the team. You know, I want to share about when I first moved into a role as a director. I'm trying to be mindful of my time, make sure I keep us on schedule. But a quick story is that sometimes we have to, even though we're hopping into a new phase, we revert back to a previous phase in that next phase. And so what I mean is, when I jumped into phase 3 of we lead, I had to learn how to lead. And I certainly would make mistakes along the way. I had hired a young lady who would be phenomenal with curriculum. She was creative. She brought life to curriculum. She had children laughing. There was excitement. There was joy in the classroom. She was great with parents, great communicator. But I will tell you that one of the challenges that she faced and that we could not help her overcome was her ability to provide awesome teamwork. And so I had made some mistakes. It took me too long as a leader to address the issue. And so I lost people along the way. There were people that just, they felt like I just couldn't work with her given her needs and where she was at in her performance. And for me, I was so excited about what she was bringing to the classroom that I didn't make adjustments soon enough, and I lost people along the way. My point in that is this: when we first begin to lead, sometimes we have to go back to a previous phase in that next phase, which is I might have to learn and I may have to master while I'm leading. And so what happens next? After we lead, we arrive at phase 4. And phase 4 is we develop. In phase 3, not only do we lead, we learn how to build teams, We learn how to make decisions. We identify the gaps of performance on our team, and we learn how to hire to fill those gaps. But now we develop. What is develop? We develop leaders. It's no longer good enough for me to influence teachers. I know that if I want to optimize my influence within early childhood education, I now have the responsibility and obligation to replicate myself and develop other leaders within early childhood education. And so this is certainly my favorite of all 4 phases. And you think about, what does that look like? Well, let's take a look. Intentional leadership development. We have to understand that we need a succession plan. What happens if we're to remove, if we take on a growth opportunity for ourselves, if we move on to a different role, if we need to step away for an emergency? We need a succession plan. Who is going to replace us? Another thing we need to consider about intentional leadership development is IDPs, individual development plans, sitting down with team members and figuring out what are your next goals over this quarter, over the next 6 months, over the next year. What do you want to accomplish, and how can I help you reach those goals? We want our people to own their own goals. We don't want to develop the goals for them. We want them to have ownership of their goals. And then the last thing is systematic workshops and training. There should be a program put in place and feedback loops for our teachers to make sure that they're receiving the training and development that they need. As I mentioned earlier on, sometimes people move on. We feel the urgency to hire. We're in a rush. We promote somebody into a role before they've been developed. And we can avoid that by making sure that we're intentional about developing our people. You know, I think about this last story I'll share with you, and that is when I felt like I had reached the level of competence in my role as a director of a center, and I realized I needed to do more. I needed to expand my scope of influence on children, on the field of early childhood education. I needed to prepare for my succession plan. I put together a director in training program, and my teachers had to apply. And I thought about some of the areas that they've not been privy to. They've not been challenged or introduced to. I think about budgeting. We have some teachers who are phenomenal teachers. They can do amazing things in the classroom, outdoor curriculum, but they've not been introduced to budgeting. They've not worn the budget hat. They don't know how to manage, but they don't know what revenue or expenses or variances look like. Parent communication, enrollment, waitlist management. They've not put together marketing trends, and how will marketing plans look different for a new center versus a center that it has been around for a while. Enrollment projections. You know, we think about, as a director of a center or a leader, you have to be able to project enrollment. And what does that look like? How do we look at historical trends and determine how we want to move forward? Performance reviews, staff meetings, all a part of leadership that sometimes our teachers get promoted into roles of leadership and they've not had the training for. I want to encourage us, wherever you're at in your goal, in your journey, on your trajectory within early childhood education, I want to encourage you to document your work so that you can teach and develop others and other leaders once you reach this phase of leadership. I want us to review quickly and wrap up. Intentional leadership. We have to be intentional about how we develop our people, reminding us of our phases. Phase 1 is we learn. Phase 2 is we master. Phase 3, and in mastery, you know, we start out by executing. We evaluate, we modify, and then we repeat. Phase 3, we lead. Phase 4, we develop. It's been a joy to spend time with you. I want to open it up for any questions you may have about leadership in early childhood.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any questions from the attendees? It was a lovely session, and it really, I think, could you have a copy of the presentation? Dr. Sue wants a copy of the presentation.
Yeah, me too. I'm in line too for a copy of
Yeah,
presentation.
so I think some of the presentations we can also send our attendees who would be wanting those. And yes, learn, master, lead, develop, and the capacity building part, the developing part, the capacity building of educators in order to be able to lead in the right tune. That's so important. So, Mr. Jones, so lovely to have to have you with us. And it's really wonderful to have the two sessions that we had. And I think there are a lot of cues and takeaways for all the attendees. And we look forward to meeting you all tomorrow at 4:30 sharp. We start the session bang on time because we don't want to delay. Like I already said, that this is a festival season. And tomorrow we have this session with Neha Seth, who would be talking about toddlers. How do they get prepared for online classes? Because we never know what eventuality comes up, and we never know when we are going to get locked into another, into our houses again. So I think this blended learning is here to stay, and so we need to prepare children a bit. So she would talk about how to prepare toddlers for online classes and preschool. Now, well, in India, I think the preschools are not going to open till about January. I mean, that's what the situation is, at least in the northeast of India. And the second session at 5 o'clock would be taken by Garima Srivastava, and she would talk about multimodal literacy in early years. So I welcome all the attendees to join us tomorrow at 4:30, and I bid adieu for today. And have a great evening, afternoon, and morning, and have a great day ahead. Bye bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.